Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to another game analysis. Today I'm gonna analyze a game submitted by Tango Jackson, who is the hero Zerg player in this game. And he submitted this replay because he is a subscriber on Twitch TV, and every now and then I will analyze replays of subscribers, and the good ones I will upload on YouTube. So that means this one has to be a pretty good example game on what I would change up. So Tango Jackson is a platinum level Zerg player, and he's up against a gold level Terran player that spawned right here in the corner. Now, he wrote right here, I actually asked him to explain himself why he was making certain decisions. So he wrote to me, "I really struggle against mech lately, especially this kind of turtle-heavy mech. He used tanks to do all kinds of early game defense, and my only answer was to go mass Muta. But Muta will get mass countered or hard countered by Thors. I felt like I only had a small window to beat this kind of Terran. First, I link Banelink attack before his tank pop out, and the second window would be mass Muta before his Thor come out. I was thinking about Swarm Host, but he can just make mass tanks and he will take out the Locust very easily, and mass Viking can kill whatever I have in the air. So I feel like there's almost no way to beat mech on a macro game. It is either finish him early or you are done. What do you think? Look forward to hearing from you." Okay, so I think this is an issue that a lot of Zerg players will have, right? When the Terran goes for the heavy mech style and you don't really know what to do. I mean, he's gonna make Thors, he's gonna make siege tanks, he's gonna make, you know, Ravens in the late game, and there's gonna be tons of Hellions and Hellbats and whatnot running around, and how do you respond to that? Now, I think the main reason why you probably aren't completely sure how to play against it is simply because of the fact that not very many Terrans play mech, right? Like, you know, mech is just not an extremely common thing. So nowadays you mostly see Bio-Mine and Bio-Widowmine, especially with the new patch. Now, there's a couple of things I like about what you're saying. First off, you say, the first window that I have is beating him before his tanks pop out. Now, that is not completely true, but you do have a slight timing window where you can beat him. But I don't think this is it, okay? So what you do right here is go for some Zergling Baneling aggression. Now, if your opponent would have played Standard, if the Terran player would have played Standard, he would have had 4 Hellions out at this time, at least. Okay, the first 2 Hellions usually pop around 610, 620. So, you know, he would have had at least like 4 Hellions out by now. Could have even been 6. So, you know, this Zergling Baneling attack, I would just stop doing that altogether. Now, I have noticed from watching this replay alone, however, that Tango Jackson really likes to play aggressive. So I'm not gonna cover that too much, okay? First off, what I would advise you to do is play much more macro heavy. And just go straight for the third base at the 6-minute mark, instead of like being delayed so far right now and whatnot. But that's not really the point of this game, right? So the first thing I would change if I were you is play a lot more macro heavy and stop trying these little tiny aggressive moves, because they will not work against higher level turns. Unless you know exactly, you know, what you're doing and you're scouting efficiently and whatnot. But okay, so talk about mech. So here's the thing with mech. If a Terran player manages to max out on mechanical units, so that is Thors, Hellbats, Hellions, siege tanks and upgrades and everything, they are really unbeatable, okay? Like, I know there's a couple of ways you can beat them, and I know you could play mass Swarm Host and just go for a 2-minute or for 2-hour long game, but I don't really like these kind of games. So honestly, if the Terran player maxes out with upgrades as well as just siege tank Thor, Hellbat, and then later on in the game Ravens, it is extremely difficult to kill a Terran player. So usually what I have done so far versus mech is just making sure that they do not max out. Now that may sound a bit silly and a bit wonky, because, you know, if a Terran maxes out, he's dead. I'm dead. You know, that is not really the good mindset to be in. What I would advise you to do is just make sure that the Terran player does not max out. And you actually do that extremely well in this game. So there's a couple of ways you can make sure that the Terran player doesn't max out. The very obvious one is to make sure that you keep attacking him and keep attacking him and keep attacking him. And that is also what I would advise you to do. Now, how are you gonna go about attacking a Terran player? So if you're gonna go for roaches, he's gonna make siege tanks and kill you, right? That is exactly what you wrote in your email. If I make roaches, he's gonna kill it with his siege tanks, and if I make a lot of Swarm Host, he's just gonna kill the Locust with his siege tanks as well. If I make Mutalisk, however, he's gonna make Thors, and the Thors kill the Mutalisk. So where exactly do I have a window to do this sort of stuff in? So what Tango Jackson actually does in this game is go for a massive amount of Mutalisks, by the way, before we actually talk about anything else. He goes for a massive amount of Mutalisks, does some Ling aggression, like very aggressive play, kills a couple of SCVs and whatnot. And then he's saving up the mutas, and at some point he moves out and goes across the map and starts killing Terran stuff. So a couple more run-bys, and I believe this is where the mutas start flying right here. Yep, there we go. Alright, so the one way you can actually make sure that the Terran player doesn't have both siege tanks and Thors is to these kind of moves. So what I would advise you to do is actually not wait, like not save up until how many mutas are there? There's 38 mutas right now. I would just make like 8 or so mutas and start flying across the map. So that would be a lot earlier than this right here. That would be way earlier. Now what that allows you to do is actually force the Proto or for the Terran player to go for a lot of Thors. If they see 8 mutas, they're like, oh shit, must make a lot of Thors because Thors actually counter mutas. Okay, that is step 1. Now, if you stay on mutas, it is going to go inevitably like it goes in this game, where you actually do some damage, you do a pretty decent amount of damage right here. But then later on in the game, you just sort of die because you didn't do enough damage. The Terran is almost maxed out and you just sort of roll over and die. So what I would do pretty much all the time when you are up against someone that goes mech and you like playing mutas is indeed play mutas, but not play them all the time. So what you do, you make about 8 to maybe 15 or so mutas, you see what damage you can do, but the damage that you are trying to do is to ensure that the Terran player is making Thors, okay? If he's making Thors, he is not making siege tanks. So that's the main thing right here. If you actually watch these factories, well, right now he's actually making Hellbats for whatever reason, but if you watch these factories, obviously he can only make 1 unit at a time. If he's making Thors, he's not making siege tanks. Now, what you want to do is make about 8 to 15 or so Mutalisks and then switch into a big roach timing attack. So what you would do is start your Mutalisk, you would start a couple of mutas, then at the same time you're getting your roach speed upgrade. I don't even think you have a roach warren in this game, no you do not. You start a roach speed upgrade as well as like a +1 attack, and then while you're doing some aggression with your mutas, you just keep flying them around exactly like you've been doing in this game. You just keep flying them around and try and force as many Thors out of your opponent as you possibly can. Then when your actual roach attack hits, he will not have as many siege tanks. Okay, if your opponent only has like 4 siege tanks, you can just run over them with the amount of roaches can have at that point in the game. So all your mutas really do in Zerg versus Terran, when the Terran goes for mech, is to force him to make Thors. Now the one other option that you have when you play mutas is to ensure that you don't lose them. Okay? If you want to go up against Muta or up against Mech and you want to play only Mutaling Bane, and that is, you know, the one strategy that you want to go for, you cannot engage his army because you're just gonna die. If you play Mutaling Bane versus a Terran player and that is the only thing you want to go for, only go for counterattacks, okay? Never ever face his army head on. Now I can't actually see exactly how many mutas you lost in this game, but it is too many. I mean, at this point, you already lost so much gas that it becomes very tricky to actually come back into this. Because right now, you're just gonna lose more and more, and all of a sudden, your mutaflock is not that impressive anymore. So, those are really your 2 options, right? So you go for mutas, then you force him to make Thors, and you switch into a massive roach timing attack. So while you make a couple of mutas, you start your roach one upgrade, you start your range for roach, or your missile upgrade for the roaches, and you go for this big roach push. Now, most of the time that I have found is that when you do this exact thing, so muta into roach, you basically ensure that he doesn't have any siege tanks out, and you can just keep on making roaches, and go for big roach timing attacks and big waves of roaches, and you just sort of win the game. So that is the one way I have found to make sure that the Pro or the Terran player does not max out, and to ensure that you do enough damage to him while, you know, he's not allowed to make massive amounts of siege tanks. Now, the one thing though, in order for that to happen properly, is that you need 3 base saturation really early on. So usually this would be happening a lot earlier. This would be happening right around 11 or 12-ish minutes or something like that. You need to make sure that you have a big backbone in this one, okay? So you do have that right here, but I think this 3rd base got up a little bit too late because of all the Terran or all the, you know, shenanigans that you were trying to do with the Zergling run-bys and whatnot. So, what I would do if I were you, okay, is go for a big amount of drones early on in the game. Try and squeeze out as many as you possibly can and just skip out on the little baneling aggressive moves. Then what I would advise you to do after that is go for the mutas that you made, but you realize that he's playing mech, so you switch into a big roach timing attack. Now every time an upgrade finishes or every time you have a big clump of roaches, you attack into the Terran army and ensure that he does not max out. Because at this point, you know, when you're in these sort of situations, it is already incredibly difficult to actually finish this one up. So, when you play against mech, make a couple of mutas, but then switch into roaches. Or just switch into roaches from the very first place, but I do like making a couple of roaches just to force these Thors to come out. So I hope that cleared up a couple of questions that you had right there about Zerg versus Terran when your opponent goes for heavy mech play. It is not this. If you stick too wrong on mutas and you don't counterattack efficiently, it's gonna be extremely difficult to finish it off. So if you have any more questions, make sure to post them in the comment section right below that like button, and I will try my very best to answer every single one of them. Other than that, I want to thank you guys all for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile. Hit that subscribe button if you enjoyed the video and like it if you really liked it.